Beyond the Gates spoilers tease that Naomi feels an almost indescribable gratitude toward Jacob, the investigator who has stepped into her fractured world at the very moment she most desperately needed an anchor. She is grateful not only because he is pursuing the mystery of her sister Chelsea's disappearance, but also because he represents a rare voice of calm and persistence when everything else in her life has descended into chaos. Naomi's voice trembles when she confesses to Jacob that Chelsea vanished on the very day that should have marked her triumph, the highly anticipated launch of her new brand. Chelsea caught. What should have been a celebration of independence and creativity spiraled into a nightmare that has not yet found its resolution. The air is thick with suspicion, and the name Allison hovers like a dark omen over every conversation. Viewers quickly begin to piece together that Allison, a woman with an unsettling obsession and an unpredictable history with Chelsea, is the likely culprit. Yet the surface-level assumption that Allison simply acted out of jealousy hardly scratches the depth of the situation. Allison's fixation is no longer just about bringing Chelsea back into her orbit. Something more twisted fuels her actions now. Something that takes shape through grotesque games and acts of psychological torment. The scenes hint at Chelsea's current state. She is not just held captive, she is bound, literally chained to a bed, her wrists raw from the metal restraints. The frame lingers on her eyes, wide with terror, darting across the shadowy room that feels less like a prison and more like a stage built for Allison's deranged performances. Allison taunts her with cruel, unpredictable games, shifting rapidly from mockery to faux affection to raw intimidation. It is not enough for Allison to have Chelsea restrained, she needs her broken, fearful, and begging. For Naomi, the agony is double-edged. She suffers not only the absence of her sister but also the guilt of knowing that Allison's obsession was no secret. Allison had tried countless times before to lure Chelsea back, sometimes with false promises of reconciliation, sometimes through veiled threats. Chelsea had resisted, trying to carve her own path, but each refusal only hardened Allison's resolve. Naomi confides in Jacob that this time feels different. Allison's methods are bolder, more dangerous, and her determination is unlike anything they had seen before. That is why Naomi's voice cracks with hope and dread when she whispers her wish, that Chelsea will return alive, unbroken, and soon. Jacob listens carefully, piecing the fragments of testimony and intuition into something actionable. His calm demeanor belies the urgency coursing through his thoughts. He has worked investigations before, but this one carries a weight he cannot quite explain. Perhaps it is Naomi's trust in him, or the vivid image of Chelsea chained and helpless that now clings to his mind. Whatever it is, he knows he cannot afford hesitation. He begins with a logical step of retracing Chelsea's last known movements, searching her apartment for traces of what she left behind. The place feels wrong the moment he steps inside. It should be alive with the echoes of her preparation for the Chelsea Cop launch, with scattered notes, fabric samples, maybe a laptop glowing with last-minute edits. Instead, it is eerily tidy, as though scrubbed clean of anything useful. That is, until Jacob notices a small glimmer wedged between the couch cushions, a ring. The object is ordinary enough in appearance but heavy with implication. Could it be Allison's? Jacob turns it over in his hand, studying its scratches, the faint imprint of wear. If it belongs to Allison, it changes the scope of the investigation entirely. It would suggest that Allison did not act alone. Someone helped her subdue Chelsea and remove her from the apartment. Someone left a trace, either deliberately or through negligence, and that mistake could unravel the web they've spun. Jacob pockets the ring and leaves, his mind already spinning with possibilities. He cannot confront Naomi yet, not until he is certain, but the idea that Allison might not be working in isolation unsettles him deeply. An accomplice would mean more unpredictability, more danger, and more difficulty in locating Chelsea alive. Determined to find clarity, Jacob begins shadowing Allison, watching her movements, documenting her routines. It does not take long for him to notice the cracks. Allison moves with a jittery paranoia, glancing over her shoulder more often than a casual observer would. Her conversations, even in public, seem veiled, coded. She makes calls that end abruptly when she realizes someone is within earshot. At times, She disappears entirely for hours, only to return as though nothing happened, her expression a mask of nonchalance. The deeper Jacob follows her, the more he senses that her instability is escalating. Whatever games she is playing with Chelsea are not just cruel but carefully choreographed, like performances designed to satisfy her twisted desire for control. Jacob envisions Chelsea enduring this torment, each hour a test of willpower, each day a descent further into fear. Naomi, meanwhile, wrestles with helplessness. She is not trained to investigate, not skilled at pursuit or deception. Yet she clings to Jacob's progress, finding solace in the way he carries himself, methodical but relentless. She begins to share more details about Allison's history with Chelsea, moments from the past that seemed harmless then but now reek of warning signs they had ignored. The way Allison would insert herself into Chelsea's life at inopportune moments, or the way her compliments carried an undertone of possession. Naomi realizes, with growing horror, that Allison had been scripting this narrative for years, slowly cultivating the obsession that has now exploded into violence. For Jacob, the challenge is balancing patience with urgency. He knows pressing too quickly could spook Allison, drive her to relocate Chelsea or escalate her cruelty. Yet waiting too long risks Chelsea's health, her sanity, perhaps even her life. Every lead feels like a tightrope strung between hope and catastrophe. He digs deeper into Allison's records, her finances, her contacts. He discovers inconsistencies, bank withdrawals that don't align with her employment, messages in her phone history to numbers that cannot be traced. Each revelation only hardens his resolve. Allison is more than a woman scorned, she is part of something larger, something that thrives on secrecy. Jacob recalls the ring again, its plain but deliberate design. Could it be symbolic, a marker of loyalty to a group, an accomplice, or something more sinister? He cannot shake the thought that Chelsea's abduction is not just a personal vendetta but part of a broader pattern, perhaps even a ritual. The narrative grows heavier as the camera lingers on Chelsea's condition. She is weak but fighting, her mind darting between panic and determination. She knows Allison wants her to break, to surrender her sense of self, but Chelsea clings to the fragments of who she was, the dream of Chelsea caught, the laughter she shared with Naomi, the sense of freedom she had only begun to taste. She repeats those memories like mantras, refusing to let Allison's games consume her. Allison's demeanor shifts wildly during these encounters. At times she is gentle, brushing Chelsea's hair back as though she were a lover. At other times she is vicious, whispering threats into her ear, promising consequences that chill the blood. Her unpredictability is perhaps her greatest weapon. Chelsea cannot anticipate which version of Allison will appear next, and that uncertainty eats away at her resolve. Back in the outside world, Jacob feels time pressing down on him like a vice. Each new observation of Allison's behavior adds urgency. He notices her visiting obscure locations on the outskirts of the city, warehouses, shuttered motels, abandoned houses. He cannot follow too closely for fear of exposing himself, but he marks every address, every potential hiding place. Naomi, though terrified, begins assisting more actively. She searches through old messages, photographs, anything Chelsea might have left behind that could provide a clue. In one faded picture, she notices a faint reflection, Allison wearing a ring nearly identical to the one Jacob found. The sight makes Naomi's stomach twist. She confirms Jacob's suspicion, the ring does belong to Allison. Which means Allison was in Chelsea's apartment the day she vanished. And if Allison was not alone, then the accomplice is someone who willingly shares her darkness. Jacob now knows his task is not only to rescue Chelsea but to untangle a web that may be far larger than anyone expected. He continues to track Allison, waiting for the moment when her paranoia slips, when she leads him to Chelsea. The hunt intensifies, and with it, the stakes rise unbearably high. Jacob's instincts sharpen as he realizes the window of opportunity is closing. He has tracked Allison to a series of obscure locations, but one stands out among the rest, an abandoned property on the edge of the city. The building is skeletal, its windows boarded, its walls cloaked with vines that strangle the last traces of civilization from its surface. It is the kind of place no one would willingly enter unless they were hiding something or someone. Inside, Chelsea's reality grows darker. Allison has escalated her cruelty. The chains around Chelsea's wrists have cut deeper into her skin, leaving marks that throb with every movement. Allison hovers over her with a manic smile, carrying out twisted rituals of power. She forces Chelsea into bizarre tests, mocking her resistance while demanding she recite fabricated confessions of loyalty. Each time Chelsea refuses, Allison devises something harsher, leaving her without food, dousing her with freezing water, or playing distorted recordings of her own voice until Chelsea's mind feels like it is fracturing. But Chelsea's spirit, though battered, has not broken. In moments of silence between Allison's games, she breathes through her fear, clinging to thoughts of Naomi. The bond with her sister becomes her lifeline. She imagines Naomi's voice encouraging her to endure, reminding her that someone out there loves her fiercely enough to fight for her. That thread of hope, however thin, keeps her anchored against Allison's tide of madness. Jacob begins circling the property, cautious, noting the strange quiet. His training tells him that storming in blindly would be reckless. If Allison senses his approach, she might lash out in ways that put Chelsea in irreversible danger. He calls Naomi, his voice steady but edged with tension. He tells her he may have found the place. Naomi's heart stutters with a mix of fear and relief. She begs him to bring her sister back, her words trembling as she fights to remain composed. Naomi's perspective has shifted since the investigation began. No longer is she a passive bystander hoping for updates. She is emotionally invested in every movement, every lead. Her mind races through memories of Chelsea's childhood, the protective role she tried to play, the arguments they had when Chelsea began carving her independence. She realizes now how much she had taken Chelsea's strength for granted. The possibility of losing her has made Naomi more determined than ever to stand beside Jacob, even if all she can offer is her resolve. Back inside the abandoned house, Allison's behavior becomes increasingly erratic. Her obsession with Chelsea wavers between adoration and contempt. She tells Chelsea that she is the only one who can make sense of her, the only one who belongs to her, then shifts without warning to venomous accusations. She claims Chelsea betrayed her, abandoned her, deserves punishment. Her voice cracks, not with sorrow but with fury that cannot find satisfaction. Chelsea listens, her body trembling but her mind piecing together the truth. Allison is unraveling. The games are no longer just entertainment for her, they are a desperate attempt to maintain control over a world that is slipping through her fingers. Chelsea realizes that if she can hold on, if she can resist breaking, Allison's grip may falter long enough for her to find an opening. Jacob waits until nightfall before making his move. He positions himself at the edge of the property, watching for signs of movement. His hand tightens around the ring in his pocket, the one that confirms Allison's direct involvement. But the presence of an accomplice gnaws at him. Every shadow feels like a threat, every creak of the old building a warning. He manages to slip inside through a side entrance, his footsteps muffled by years of dust. The interior is worse than he imagined, walls scrawled with erratic symbols, photographs torn and pinned in grotesque patterns, fragments of Chelsea's belongings scattered like trophies. His pulse quickens. He knows she is here. He knows Allison has turned this place into a theater for her cruelty. In a room deeper inside, Chelsea hears the faint sound of movement. Her heart leaps. Could it be Jacob? She dares not call out, knowing Allison could be nearby. Instead, she closes her eyes, studying her breath, praying the sound belongs to salvation rather than another layer of torment. Allison, however, senses the shift in atmosphere. Her instincts tell her someone is encroaching on her sanctuary. She grows restless, pacing the room, her gaze darting to the boarded windows. The moment confirms Jacob's suspicion. Allison is not invincible. She is paranoid, unstable, and afraid. Naomi waits anxiously on the other end of her phone, Jacob's last words echoing in her ears. She cannot see what is unfolding, but she feels it as though her own heart were inside that house. She whispers promises to her absent sister, telling her to hold on, to survive, that they will be together again. Jacob edges closer to the room where muffled sounds suggest Chelsea's captivity. His hand brushes the weapon at his side, though he knows force may only provoke Allison into something irreversible. He steadies himself, preparing for confrontation not only with a dangerous woman but with the possibility of an unseen accomplice. Meanwhile, she brings a mirror to Chelsea, forcing her to look at her own reflection under dim, flickering light. She tells her she is unrecognizable, that without her freedom, her voice, or her independence, she is nothing. But Chelsea, exhausted and raw, finds strength in defiance. She stares back into the mirror and whispers Naomi's name. The sound is faint but filled with resolve, a spark that even Allison's madness cannot extinguish. The fragile balance teeters. Allison strikes out, furious at Chelsea's resistance, but the noise is enough to guide Jacob to the threshold of the room. He stands outside, listening, his mind racing with tactics. He cannot risk barging in recklessly. He needs precision, timing, and a way to outmaneuver Allison without triggering disaster. The tension thickens as Allison's rage grows. She circles Chelsea, her words venomous, her eyes wild. Yet Jacob notices the cracks in her posture, the hesitation that betrays her fear. She is powerful only so long as Chelsea remains subdued. He takes a deep breath, readying himself to act, knowing that the choices he makes in the next few moments could determine everything: Chelsea's survival, Naomi's hope, and the unraveling of Allison's reign of terror. The ring in his pocket feels heavier than ever, a reminder that darkness is rarely solitary, that someone else may still be lurking in the shadows, waiting for the right moment to strike. The stage is set for a confrontation that will push every character to the edge, where truth, survival, and obsession collide with devastating force. The silence before impact stretches unbearably long. Jacob steadies his breathing, his ear pressed against the cracked door, listening to every syllable of Allison's tirade. The words are venomous, dripping with the power she believes she wields over Chelsea. But beneath the rage Jacob hears something else: instability, the tremor of someone losing control. Chelsea's voice is faint, trembling but unwavering, as she whispers Naomi's name again. The sound carries more power than any scream. It is defiance. It is identity. And it ignites something in Jacob. He knows he cannot wait another second. The door creaks as he pushes it open, stepping into the dim light. The scene burns into his mind: Chelsea, chained, gaunt, but her eyes alive with resistance. Allison, looming over her, whip-quick in her movements, her expression snapping from shock to fury. Allison, Jacob says evenly, his tone the voice of authority and reason, though his muscles are coiled to strike. This ends now. Her lips curl into a smile that doesn't reach her eyes. You think you understand? You don't know what she means. She belongs here. She belongs with me. Chelsea shakes her head weakly, but Allison grabs her jaw, forcing her face upward. Look at her, she hisses at Jacob. She's mine. She was always mine. Jacob moves closer, each step measured. He sees the knife in Allison's hand, the trembling edge of steel catching the flickering light. He calculates the distance, the timing, the risk. He knows he cannot let Allison feel cornered enough to lash out at Chelsea. You're scared, Jacob says quietly. That's why you chained her. That's why you play these games. Because if she stands free, she'll choose someone else. She'll walk away. And you can't live with that. The words strike something raw in Allison. Her grip falters, just slightly, but enough for Chelsea to gasp for air. Her eyes dart to Jacob, pleading silently. Then it happens. A sound from behind the wall says shuffle. A breath tat confirms Jacob's worst suspicion. The accomplice. He turns just as a figure emerges from the shadows, masked and silent, moving with a precision that screams preparation. Jacob pivots, blocking the figure's path. The fight is sudden, brutal. The accomplice lunges, but Jacob deflects, his training carrying him through the chaos. Blows land, fists crack against bone, and the room fills with the sound of struggle. Allison screams, torn between aiding her ally and maintaining her hold on Chelsea. Chelsea uses the moment. Summoning every ounce of strength, she twists against the chains, cutting her wrists raw but forcing movement. The cuff scrapes, loosens, until with a desperate wrench she frees one hand. Pain sears through her, but freedom fuels her resolve. Allison, stop! She shouts, her voice breaking but fierce. "You don't own me. You never did." The words slice through the room like a blade sharper than any weapon. Allison freezes, her expression collapsing into something unreadable: shock, sorrow, rage all tangled. She falters, and in that hesitation Jacob overpowers the accomplice, slamming him to the ground. With one final surge, Jacob disarms Allison, wrenching the knife from her grip. She screams, clawing, but her strength is no match for the precision of his restraint. He forces her to the ground, his breath ragged, his body taut with adrenaline. Chelsea pulls the remaining cuff loose, collapsing forward, her body trembling violently. For a moment she cannot process the reality after days of torment. The sight of Jacob restraining Allison feels like a hallucination. But then his voice reaches her, steady and grounding. "You're safe now, Chelsea. I've got you." Tears spill down her face. Unstoppable, she whispers Naomi's name again, this time not in desperation but in relief. Outside, sirens grow louder, the security force Jacob had coordinated finally converging on the property. Within minutes, Allison and her accomplice are restrained, their manic protests drowned out by the crackle of radios and the heavy boots of officers swarming the house. Naomi arrives in a rush, her eyes wild with fear until they land on Chelsea. The reunion is raw and unfiltered. Naomi falls to her knees, wrapping her arms around her sister, sobbing apologies into her hair. Chelsea clings back, weak but alive, whispering over and over that she survived because she believed Naomi would never stop fighting for her. Jacob stands aside, exhaustion washing over him, but his eyes remain sharp. He watches Allison being dragged away, her screams echoing into the night. There is no satisfaction in her capture, only the heavy weight of what she put Chelsea through. He knows recovery will be long, that wounds like these do not vanish when chains are removed. But he also knows Chelsea is not broken. She endured Allison's twisted games, she resisted the pull to surrender, and she emerged with her will intact. That is victory enough. In the days that follow, Chelsea begins to heal, surrounded by Naomi's unwavering support. The Chelsea Cot launch becomes less about fashion and more about resilience, her brand reborn as a symbol of survival and identity reclaimed. Naomi insists that Jacob remain close, not as an investigator but as someone who helped bring Chelsea back from the edge. As for Allison, her name becomes a whisper, a ghost in the corridors of justice. Her obsession has been unmasked for the world to see, her accomplice exposed, but the scars she left behind linger as reminders of how fragile and precious freedom can be. Jacob reflects often on the ring, the small object that unlocked the path to truth. It sits now sealed away in evidence, but for him, it represents the thin line between despair and salvation's single clue that set everything into motion. In the quiet moments, Chelsea takes Naomi's hand and speaks softly. "She tried to take everything from me. But she couldn't take you. She couldn't take us." Naomi squeezes back, tears in her eyes, and Jacob allows himself a rare smile. For all the darkness Allison unleashed, it could not extinguish the bond between sisters, nor the determination of those who refuse to give up. The gates that once seemed impenetrable have been crossed, not by force alone but by faith, resilience, and the refusal to let fear dictate the end of the story. And though shadows will always linger, Chelsea walks forward into the light, hand in hand with the family who refused to let her be lost.